Get ready to enter a fantastical world of magic and wonder, where dragons inflate like blimps and evil wizards are defeated by having science terms yelled at them.
The f*** is this?
Hey, welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and however else you wish to self-identify, to TFIT, where tiny flamingos inquire thoughtfully. Shut up, whatever.
The football is going.
See, that's why I wrote it down first. It's hard to come up with at the same time.
Improv is hard.
Improv is hard, yes, and. My name is Kaz Lesgard, and joining me as always is Jameson Rafter.
Hello again, everybody.
Oh, I love this off-the-cuff humor of ours. God, we're so good.
It's very natural for us because, I genuinely don't know what we're going to talk about. We do not discuss this beforehand.
No, we don't, but that's what the public is clamoring for. They want this sort of off-the-cuff, just off the top of your head, just rambling with...
The sad thing is, I did have, some improv training through high school.
Oh, I did too!
And I did, an improv show with my sister, and, I had a new appreciation for improv because as much as the audience thinks it's all, in part of the imagination, there is, a 20-second, huddle with the improvisers going together and say, alright, so this is the scene, what do we want to do with this? Okay, I'll handle this part, okay, you do that part, and break, and then it's all improvised.
But you're absolutely in your head, and the important thing about improv is, don't try to be funny, but I don't know, it comes a lot easier for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not natural, funny guys like us.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Yes, and.
Yes, and. Moving on. Alright, well, before we welcome our guest who is on his way over, I should also mention, this is the first time that we are recording in my apartment as opposed to Jameson's apartment because, as Jameson told me, it is most likely hot as balls in your apartment currently.
Absolutely.
Right now.
That's the glory of living downtown in the June months in an apartment that faces southbound and gets nothing but nonstop sunlight between 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yeah. It gets brutally hot in my place, and we would be dying if we had to do summertime episode recordings.
Yeah.
There. So I'm happy to be here in your lovely basement suite.
Yes. Yes, you can. Yes, I don't live in squalor.
No.
You can see.
Yeah, it's not a shack in the woods like I was led to believe.
Yeah. We're in my basement apartment. This does mean that at some point in time we might be joined by my landlord's dog, Rosie, as a guest who has a tendency to freak the fuck out for little to no reason. So, before we jump into today's episode and welcome our guest, I thought it might be fun if we had another round of Probably Should Have Mentioned That.
Probably should have mentioned that, Prob.
Oh boy.
Yes, you thought Wrong Side of Town was dead and buried, but as I was editing that episode, I'm like, oh, there's a couple more things I wanted to talk about.
Just let that episode die, Jesus.
Yeah, oh man, so much of that movie is now burned into my memory just because I had to go back and I had to rewatch parts of it over and over again. There was so much weirdness in that movie that we didn't end up talking about, because we kind of ran out of time with Mike, and then we had the
technical difficulties.
Yeah, and we just got we should probably get this over and done with. Yeah. There's so much we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about that weird moment where they're being held at gunpoint, and RVD's plan for getting away is saying that he has diamonds hidden in his sock.
Oh yeah, sort of like a clever ruse against the gunman, yeah. Although you're going to say you probably should have mentioned he didn't actually have diamonds in his socks.
No, he didn't have diamonds in his sock, but what's amazing is that they actually believed him. And they're all like, go get those diamonds! And then he beat the crap out of all of them. What I want to talk about is that amazing opening title sequence.
Yes.
The
Casino Royale-esque Bond pseudo.
What I found was kind of interesting was how that opening title sequence chose to list the actors in the opening credits, and I went back and I looked at the names that they were mentioning in the opening title crawl, and I noticed something kind of interesting. I don't know what the deal was in terms of who got credit for what, but here's the names of, I'm not going to name all the actors, but what I'll do is I'll list the characters that they played, and then you tell me if something seems odd. So after RVD and Dave Bautista and the title Wrong Side of Town, this is the order that the characters characters' names appear in the opening credits. So the first two are Omarion and Ja Rule, who just play...
Who had like a 1 minute cameo.
Who just play random thugs. And then we go to Clay, the next door neighbor.
Right.
Then it's Seth, the main villain. Then it's Elise, Clay's wife.
Okay.
Then it's with Viscera,
Mm-hmm.
and then the dirty cop, and then we get to introducing the fight choreographer who had never acted before.
Right,
They just wanted to throw that in there. Anyone missing from that title crawl?
You mentioned Batista, you mentioned Ja Rule, Stormy Daniels wasn't mentioned.
Stormy Daniels wasn't mentioned. The main thing I want to is, I guess...
Wait, Seth, was he not mentioned?
No, Seth was mentioned.
Seth was mentioned? Okay.
I guess, fuck... The actors playing RVD's wife and daughter.
Oh shit!
Who are major characters in that movie.
Oh yeah! What the fuck?
Clay's wife got mentioned, but not like
not the wife, and not like the main motivator to the plot, or someone who has like a bulk of the screen time.
Yeah,
like...
neither of them show up.
Oh shit!
I thought that was kind of weird.
Okay.
Yeah,
that is fucked.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up is that talking to Mike, we had such a great conversation.
Yeah, that was
with
a great
Mike,
combo,
and it was a great reminder that people in this industry wear so many different hats. Like he's done so much in film. He's had so many different jobs.
Yeah.
And I looked into, the IMDb of everyone in that movie, and I realized these are all hardworking people.
Journeyman actors.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in this terrible movie, and none of them are giving great performances, but, the material...
Some of them aren't even getting credited.
The material's not really helping them, but you dive into it and you find out that most of the people in this movie who aren't wrestlers all have writing credits, they all have directing credits, they got some interesting stuff here. Edric Brown, who played Clay, has got a stunt credit for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Okay. He did seem like a big dude, so he looked like he could take a fall or...
I looked into it, and, this is kind of the only role where he's playing a nerd. He's sort of, like...
He didn't look like he should be playing a nerd.
No. Ava Santana, who played his wife Elise, was the travel coordinator for 12 Years a Slave.
Whoa!
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Wow, what a jump from from quality.
Scott Schwartz, who was one of the two biker thugs. He was the dude that beat up George Clooney in Ocean's 11.
Right.
He wrote and directed a movie called Changing Hands, which stars past TFIT superstars.
Danny Trejo.
No, not Danny Trejo. Stars Erica Elenick, the sex robot from Dracula 3000, and our old buddy Shark Fralick.
Oh, no way!
So I was going through that, I'm all like, oh, that's a funny coincidence.
Yeah.
But the thing I really wanted to mention is your favorite actor, the fucking cabbie.
Oh, right, yeah, that dude.
Whose name is...
Was he not just a regular cabbie they pulled off the street?
His name is Karsten H.W. Lorenz.
Oh, hell yeah.
And he was the producer of the movie.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh, so it was a vanity rock on roll.
Of course he was, yeah. So yeah, he was the producer of the movie. He also produced Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, The Grudge, and Independence Day 2.
Really?
Yeah.
The worst of the Independence Day movies.
All two of them. Didn't actually hate Independence Day 2. I thought it was stupid fun.
I did, because I had recently watched Independence Day 1, and it holds up. Like, it's a dumb... It's a dumb 90s action movie, but it's fun, and like...
I mean, it holds up in some areas. I mean, it's pretty great action. The chemistry between the actors is pretty great. And then Harvey Farstein shows up.
What you doing, Jeff Goldblum?
I gotta call my mother. I gotta call my lawyer. Actually, screw my lawyer.
I probably did.
It holds up fantastically.
You know what Independence Day, the first movie, did? There is a long-established movie trope where nobody says goodbye when they hang up a phone, when they're having like a phone conversation with somebody.
Is that the first one that had goodbye?
I did notice that in the middle of this cheesy 90s action blockbuster, someone's on the phone with someone, and then they end it with, okay, goodbye, and then they hang up. It's not just, okay, and then phone goes on the receiver. And I was like, look at that, beating the tropes.
All right, well, now that we've broken down the door on Independence Day, let us welcome our guest. He is a good friend of mine. He's an actor, a writer, and a director. Please welcome Brett Willis to the show.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Hello, Brett.
Thanks for joining us, buddy.
I applaud myself as well. 'Cause
Sure, why the hell not?
I'm just slow, sad, just shaking the head.
walk off kind
The
of.
next minute and a half of the show is just clapping, which I'm sure is going to sound great in people's headphones.
Yeah.
All right, Brett, we watch baffling, strange movies on this show that no one's ever heard of. What are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorites, though, just the bargain basement stuff.
Yeah!
I was big in, I still am big into animation, so I like finding all of the really weird ones, the ones that kind of appear on TV once and then disappear forever. And the two directors for this movie are kind of famous for that.
You're the one that suggested today's movie. This is a movie that neither of us have seen. You told me this is somewhat of a childhood favorite of yours.
I have seen this movie well over 20 times.
Oh, Jesus.
Damn! All right.
But I have seen the beginning of it once.
How does that work?
This was, like I said before, this was a movie that appeared on TV once in the 80s. My mom taped it on the TV. Didn't really know how to use the VCR, so the first 10 minutes or so of the movie I never saw.
Oh, you had to make it up in your
Oh,
mind?
so you walked in the middle of it and you had to piece together the plot yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to piece together. It's not a thoroughly difficult plot.
Mm.
But that also means I have all the commercials that were airing at the time also preserved forever on this VHS
like a
tape.
time capsule.
Oh, do you remember what they are?
The
Complete
only
the
one
illusion.
that I know 100% is the Rice Krispies commercials that appeared in every single commercial break for this, where this guy is just being berated by his mom for living with his mom and being friends with Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Wow, that's really fucking sad.
Yeah, the 80s were a strange time.
Don't listen to your mom, Ted! Yeah, kill her! Kill her in her
They're
sleep!
the dark passengers. Like you just
Pop's the evil one. Pop's the one that was really cool.
yeah, he was the
Do it.
he was the mischief
Do it.
maker.
So today we're watching the 1982 movie The Flight of Dragons.
Based on the book by Peter Dickinson, who is also the main character of this movie.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
So it's like a real it is a legit Mary Sue.
Well, here's the thing about this. So the book, The Flight of Dragons, is not the same as the movie, The Flight of Dragons, because the book, The Flight of Dragons, was this guy's book that he made trying to explain how dragons work, and then they decided to take that book and make a movie out of that with the new characters, new plot. Like, it's not a plot. There's no story in this book. It's just like a textbook.
So
on
it was
the anatomy of dragons.
So there was just like the diary of a madman, and someone said, "Hey, this isn't that bad. Let's actually fast track this into production and pad it with some characters."
Yeah, and let's take the author of the book and make him the main hero of the whole movie.
Let's publicly shame this crazy man. Dragon delusions.
I'll actually jump in here. Wikipedia tells me that this movie is actually a combination of The Flight of Dragons by Peter Dickinson and also another book called The Dragon and the George, which is the first of
Like the Summer of George?
What's the summer? Oh, is that a
Summer of George!
Oh, that's a Seinfeld. Oh, okay, cool.
Famous.
Yes. I'm sure that's what he was talking about.
George is getting upset.
Why does everyone have a dragon, Jerry? Why most be a dragon?
People want the dragons.
It's the first of 9 books in a series called the Dragon Knight series, and the author of that book, interestingly enough, is Gordon R. Dickson. So we got one by Dickinson, and then another book by Dixon.
And they both sound awful. This is not a series of books that is close to my childhood. That does not sound like a good thing to read.
Well, there has to be something there. They made a movie about this. They combined the best of both worlds.
That surprises me because take the lore from one book and the story of another book and just push them together.
Well, because you said the other book wasn't even like a fiction book; it was like a non-fiction book.
Yeah.
On that same wavelength, because I've never read this, but isn't that kind of like the same thing with How to Train Your Dragon? That was based on a book that didn't have like a story, right? That was literally like a textbook on How to Train Your Dragon, and they created a story around it.
Was it?
I think I might be totally wrong about that. I don't read a lot of children's fiction.
So the legacy of Flight of Dragons lives on into the 21st century.
And now it's our responsibility to carry on that torch into a new medium.
So speaking of legacy, the directors you mentioned earlier, this movie come to us from Rankin and Bass.
Yes.
Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr., who, of course, are responsible for such amazing classics as Mad Monster Party, Little Drummer Boy, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Here Comes Peter Cottontail, The Year Without a Santa Claus, The Hobbit, The Return of the King.
Not the rest of the Lord of the Rings, just Return of the King.
Yeah, just The Hobbit and The Return of the King. Yeah, because The Lord of the Rings was done by, what's his name?
Rankin Bass. No, not Rankin Bass. Blasky. Ralph Blasky.
That's the road.
Bakshi. Ralph Bakshi. Yeah.
I can't pronounce it.
They also directed, in the same year that this movie came out, The Last Unicorn.
Which is their big movie.
It is. And most importantly of all, of course, they are responsible for the Jackson 5 cartoon show.
What's the matter, man? Why are you so glum?
I've been thinking. I bet there's all kind of woodland cats live here. What kind of person would kick out all these cats out of their project just to build a rock stadium?
All right. What are you kids rapping about? Well, to put it to you straight, we don't think you should cut down these woods just so we can give a concert. Huh?
Yeah, there's lots of places we can sing.
There's just so many woods. And when those woods are gone, man,
It's the end for the whole human race.
Of which we are proud members.
Ta-da!
Oh, really? Well, isn't that just tough? 'Cause I'm gonna cut down all the trees I like, and no bunch of ecology-happy kooks are gonna stop me.
that's my problem. I'm an ecology-happy coot. And I always thought I was just an ordinary coot. Stop the clowning, Jermaine. This is serious.
So yeah, let's talk about the
Jackson.
cast of this show, the voice talent of this show. Well, playing the role of Peter Dickinson himself is John Ritter.
Yep.
Yeah, Three's Company.
Classic comedy legend right there.
We also got James Earl Jones.
Oh, no way.
As the evil wizard Lord Omadon.
Omadon. Oh my god.
Voicing Arig the Wolf, we got
Victor Buono, who was nominated for an Academy Award for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but is probably best remembered as King Tut from the live-action Batman.
Let it be a warning, loyal subjects. Our enemies shall be reduced even as these to mindless slave. Dance, you slaves. Dance for our amusement. Music. Bat music.
God, I love the Adam West Batman. I mean, who fucking doesn't love the Adam West Batman?
I used to run home from elementary school so I could catch the Adam West Batman.
It was a big inspiration for the Kilroy series,
And
like superhero parody stuff. That I
You
was
had
doing.
to run home to watch it because it was always a cliffhanger.
Yes,
Yeah.
You had to find
same
out.
that time.
You had to
Unless
find.
it was Catwoman was featured, then it was same cat time.
Oh shit.
as Carolinus the Green Wizard.
We got Harry Morgan.
The beloved Colonel Potter from MASH.
Oh really?
Then we have a gentleman I'm not familiar with named James Gregory, who plays the dual roles of Smeargle and Breag.
Say that again, please.
I'm sure I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Brah.
Breag and Smeargle.
That's super Gaelic.
I've never heard of it, but I just wanted to read his Wikipedia page because I thought this was worded really smoothly. He was an American character actor known for his deep, gravelly voice and playing such brash roles as the McCarthy-like Senator John Iselin in The Manchurian Candidate, the audacious General Ursus in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and the crusty Inspector Frank Luger in the television sitcom Barney Miller.
Oh shit! So he had like a lot of acclaimed roles in popular movies and shows.
Just nothing that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, which
Whoosh.
I'm sure happens. And there's a couple of classic voiceover actors in this too. Paul Frees, who was the voice of Ludwig von Drake,
Oh, nice.
and Boris Badenov in the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, and also Don Messick shows up in this. Don Messick was the original voice of Scooby-Doo, Papa Smurf, Boo Boo Bear, and Ranger Smith.
So this is going to be a trip down memory lane for a child of the '80s such as myself.
Very much. Before we watch this, Brett, what else can you tell us about this movie?
Another thing with the voice cast, in the IMDb breakdown, there are several characters actually missing
Oh, yeah?
on the breakdown, including one whose voice actor is lost to time.
Really?
No one knows who voiced the character of Solarius, the Blue Wizard.
Oh, that's
There's
cool.
no record of whoever did it. And it's not like, he's a small character, but he's not like a one-liner. He's an important part of the movie, and no one knows who played him.
You know what? That's interesting because, in the 50s and 60s, a lot of these animation recording studios were done at the same recording studios that they would, like Columbia Records or whatever would be having their sound tests. So they would be waving in these musicians "Hey, you're in today. Do you want to voice something?" So you may have gotten someone like Frank Sinatra voicing Farmer Number 2 or something outrageous like that.
Because I'm sure Frank Sinatra had nothing better to do with his time.
Goo goo ga baby, let's do that farming, Jack.
Why is that one farmer just crooning and just being super misogynistic? really out of place.
But yeah, like there's so many instances where like, yeah, we just needed to fill out these like extra roles, and they just didn't bother writing it down because, you know, these superstars didn't want to be known on like something that was probably meant for kids.
Well, it's also worth knowing that back in the early days for animation, when they became talkies and they actually had lines and dialogue, most voice casts weren't even credited. They were usually just part of the sound department. Like Mel Blanc, the father of every Looney Tunes character except Granny. That's the only one he didn't do.
And you know he tried.
He tried.
He probably he could.
Was not credited as the voice for any of these characters. His name was just part of the sound department because early days in animation, no one cared about it. It was just a way to get the animation studios more publicity, to like look at what we can do, not like the stories we make, the writers and the voiceover cast. They were screwed. It's tradition
like these guys aren't names, you know. They're
I mean, it's a tradition that has lasted for many, many years because when in Space Jam, the voiceover cast, all the Looney Tunes characters, they were not invited to the premiere of the movie.
Yeah, and of course, you know, like this came out in like 1982, before the whole celebrity voice cast thing was like really a deal. I mean, like obviously back in '82, everyone knew who James Earl Jones was. I assume everyone knew who John Ritter was, because Three's Company had been going on for a while. So those were two huge names, but I'm sure this movie wasn't marketed as starring James Earl Jones and John Ritter.
That's the thing that just really took off after Shrek. Shrek brought that idea home, and that's
was it Shrek or was it Aladdin?
I think it was Aladdin. Like that was the first one that was.
So Aladdin is interesting because the role of the genie was written for Robin Williams, and he was always going to be brought in to play that role. But can you name the other cast members? Can you name?
I can, but I'm a nerd.
Gilbert Godfrey.
So...
Gilbert Godfrey. There's like the comedian. They're bringing on these support characters, and that was a formula that they were actually trying to embrace. They're bringing in these high-profile comedic actors for these side characters,
bit roles,
but were like again super influential. But the idea of the celebrity cast really takes off with Shrek. We have Mike Myers, John Lithgow,
Eddie Murphy,
Cameron Diaz, Eddie Murphy. They're the main cast. They're the focus of the movies. And now DreamWorks and Illumination, that's their pattern. Even the Disney, who rejected doing that for years and years and years, and only wanted celebrities for bit parts, are now in the fray of that because they're hiring these big name celebrities to play.
They're getting a little bit better though. I mean, there was a period I feel like maybe in like the mid 2000s where it was just let's just shove as many recognizable faces in this movie as possible. But like nowadays, they are casting celebrities in these voice acting roles, but they're getting better at making sure that the voice actually does fit the character.
They're going for more like character actors. Like Alan Tudyk is like voicing pretty much every major Disney movie now since Frozen. But he's pretty versatile as a voice actor.
And Frozen's a good example.
And he's not that much of a name.
Frozen's a good example because, you know, the characters in that movie are played by people you've heard of before, but they're not, like, super famous, and they do fit those roles incredibly well.
Well, they're also casting them before they're animating them, so they're actually getting getting the character models to resemble the original actors a lot more because they plan these so much further in advance. Not a movie like this. Like, all the character designs would have been decided months before they even thought about who they're going to cast. So
and that's what
get voice actors just kind of fit the profile first.
Here's what the character looks like. What do you think this guy's going to sound like? And if he's like a short, stocky little guy with the crazy bug eyes, he's going to sound like this.
So that's kind of the way that animation voiceover is changed, and it's only been since like Aladdin, the big shift came with Shrek, but there's that slow little bit in the late 90s when things were changing.
They sort of like, I do still think Aladdin kind of like kicked it off because you can find one or two like animated movies that like they felt. Well, a good example is Anastasia. That came out in like 1997, and that is chock full of celebrities. Yep. But they didn't really like lean hard on that in the marketing.
It wasn't I don't recall that being a terribly great movie.
I think Anastasia is better than people give it credit for. I think it's got some flaws, but...
it's got some historical inaccuracies, that's for damn sure.
It's also the biggest...
It would be a very short movie if they actually followed through with what happened to Anastasia.
The Workers' Revolution and...
I'm also fairly certain that Rasputin wasn't a zombie.
Or a wizard.
I mean, you can say the same thing about Beauty and the Beast, because that's clearly like 4 or 5 years before the French Revolution, so guess where the Beast's head's going?
Yeah.
Like, spells there too, so those peasants...
Disenfranchised peasant people and like aristocratic like shitbag. Like, what do you think's going to happen?
My favorite plot hole in Beauty and the Beast is, at the end of the movie, he kills Gaston and everyone's happy and the curse is lifted and everyone's all like, "Yay, hooray!" And it completely omits the fact that there's still an angry mob. Like, the mob hasn't gone anywhere. Plus, you've killed their favorite person.
Yeah, they just
say to Son about he's everyone's favorite guy.
The town hero, yeah.
So if anything, they're more pissed off at you now. It doesn't matter if you're human or not. All right. Well,
I was wondering if there was like a toilet person. When everyone in the castle gets turned into inanimate objects. Was there a toilet guy?
There was in the live-action remake.
Oh, poor dude.
No, they cut it out.
Oh.
And it's only on
For good reason!
Yeah.
The poor guy.
They just, they like pan over to him and when he's human again and he's just like shell-shocked. He's probably got like a French name like Crapier.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's watch The Flight of Dragons, an animated classic that no one seems to remember except for Brett.
And I will say that the epic final battle of this fantasy adventure is not gonna go the way you think it's gonna go.
That's what you said. I'm rather intrigued. I'm rather intrigued to see how this all plays out. Yes. Mm-hmm. This may end up being the first genuinely good movie we've ever done on this show. That's not like good in an ironic sense. Mm-hmm. Fingers crossed. Anyway.
Brett's creeping smile may suggest otherwise.
I'm trusting you.
I've watched this movie 20 times. Take that as you will.
All right. Well, here we go. Number 21.
Yeah,
we'll see you after the break.
21 times the charm.
And we are back.
Hello again, everyone.
All right. What you failed to mention, like before we watched the movie, is that this is now like the fourth movie that we've done on this podcast that has a dope fucking theme song.
Right?
Yeah.
Holy shit! That was
the beginning and the end.
The Flight of Dragons
by none other than Don fucking McClane.
Hell yeah, he's got a sweet voice.
Flight of Dragons, soar in the purple light, in the sky, or in my mind. Flight of Dragons.
I mean, he's got a sweet voice, and he's singing like the dorkiest fucking song ever. That was the nerdiest fucking movie I've ever watched in my entire life.
And not just like fantasy nerdy stuff, but like book like nerd fantasy stuff too, like science book nerd.
If you could personify fantasy movies, this is the fantasy movie that would get its ass kicked by the other fantasy
by Lord
movies.
of the Rings and Game of Thrones and everything else that has to do with like sword fights and battles.
There's always that guy who takes fantasy stories and is like tries to find a scientific explanation as to how everything works in them. Like those people who even break down like how the science of Star Wars works. Yeah, that's this guy. That's this whole movie. This whole movie is just that guy.
And we don't ask for it. We don't need it. We just kind of accepted that this is going to be high fantasy. So like whatever. Let's just sit back and enjoy some magic.
Did you ever ask when reading those fantasy dragon stories from your childhood, how do dragons fly? How do they breathe fire?
Because this movie will answer those questions in excruciating detail.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to break it down, this movie is 80% delightful and 20% absolutely fucking insufferable.
Yeah.
I just want them to shut up.
Like there's going to be a fucking test at the end of this.
Oh my god.
There are multiple 5-minute scenes where they're just explaining the science behind this fantasy magic.
Yeah, the other time they're like explaining backstory that sounds really kind of cool, but sometimes they show it, sometimes they don't, because they gotta save time for the lectures.
And every character has a backstory.
Every fucking character's got a huge backstory.
And all of the backstory story is just mountains and mountains of exposition. Sometimes the backstories are really interesting, but we, for whatever reason, we're thrown into, like, the middle of them, and we don't get to see the really interesting parts, which we'll get to. Do you know what this movie reminded me so much of, just in terms of the art style? I'm sure if you listening, if you've seen some of the other Rankin Bass 2D animated films like The Hobbit and The Last Unicorn, it'll remind you of that. Do you know what this really reminded me of? Have you ever seen any footage of the CDI Zeldas?
Yes.
That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
How about a kiss?
Particularly when it got to the innkeeper. The innkeeper looked exactly like a character model from that thing. And like the weird way the characters were animated.
Yeah, they're all wobbly and everything.
I just wanted to like freeze frame so much of them because there's so many frames where they're just doing something weird and they're like frozen in like a weird position, like their hand is above their head, and like there's so many shots where like characters are just like cross-eyed for no reason, like they couldn't be bothered to.
Their eyes are different sizes and shapes, consistently like throughout them. So like there's just different animation teams coming in every day.
Like one guy's in charge of the heads and the other guy's in charge of the bodies. And...
I don't like how Ken did the eyes. I want to do them differently this time.
Guys come in after hours to erase the other guy's work and fill in for him.
Okay, so normally it falls on either Jameson or myself to recap the plot, but I am utterly lost, Brett. I mean, and you have seen this movie 20 times.
We can try. I mean,
so I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one.
Listener, if you want a perfect summation, have like 15 bong rips and then like take a listen to this high fantasy story of wizards and dragons
and science.
We
were way too sober for this movie. Good Lord. This was not a movie to watch at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Sober as a judge.
So the way the movie goes is the realms of science and logic and the realms of magic are at odds with each other, and caught in the middle is mankind. Do they side with magic or do they side with science? But because logic is so logical, as one of the characters rightfully pointed out,
logic was so illogical.
Mankind has decided to move towards science and understanding and experimentation to achieve all their inspiration in their lives. And so the 4 ancient magic brothers, who have likely the same mother and all different fathers, pointed out.
Maybe it was like an honorary brotherhood, like a brotherhood of wizards.
Yeah.
Because they keep referencing, like, the ancient laws, which we must abide by. It's all like, who wrote the laws? It kind of seemed like you did.
No, the tree wrote the laws.
The tree did.
The talking tree that he talks to at one point.
So the talking tree, called Antiquity,
I have a theory on that, but keep going.
Puts forward the idea of creating a self-sustaining magic realm that is separate and visible from the rest of the world so that magic can continue to exist, because according to these 4 wizards, mankind needs magic in their lives to inspire them to then pursue their scientific endeavors. Also, like as a fairy flies, a jealous man will like, I want to fly, and so he will invent an aeroplane.
But also to like protect the realm of magic, because in one of the early scenes we saw like a bunch of fairies fly around a goose head, and it distracts enough to get it caught in a water wheeler. That's what gets the plot moving.
That's what we got. We were first introduced to the green wizard
Coriolanus.
Carolinus. I kept thinking it was Coriolanus, but no, Carolinus. And he goes off on like these 3 dudes who own like this mill, because fairies are just kind of like hitching the ride on the back of a goose, and it's just like tee hee hee, and the goose isn't watching where he's going,
and he smack dab right into a water.
Yeah, we think like something grisly has happened to the goose, but I mean both the goose and the fairies end up being fine. But Carolinus is all like, technology!
This is no place for fairies. And
take care. Be careful with your machines, I say. Who's making all that rumpus?
It's that balmy old gent what lives upstream.
Your motors must not crowd out all magic, or the world is lost.
Some sort of magician, I hear.
I am Carolinus, the Green Wizard.
You're loony, you are. Get back to where you belong.
I belong everywhere, for my domain is the green world, nature itself and all its inhabitants.
It's like, I mean, like, there seemed to be, like, a better way to prove your point. That was just a distracted goose.
Yeah.
That could have happened to anyone, really.
Yeah. So he calls for, like, a wizard summit with his three brothers, his Asian brother, his African brother, and...
Who is obsessed with his job.
Yes, he will not shut up about how he is, like, the commander of the seas and the stars.
I have the name. So the blue wizard is
Solarius.
Yes, who controls both the seas and outer space, which does make sense because they are connected.
With the tides.
And the highest mountains.
So just everything.
Yeah.
Highest mountains, outer space, and deepest ocean.
What is Carolinas in charge of?
The Greenland.
Oh, the Greenland.
Yeah.
And then Lotazao.
He commands the air and peace and tranquility.
Harmony.
Yeah.
Yes, who is the
Asian one.
The Asian one, but thankfully they don't go out of their way to make it too offensive.
So he's got the bright pointy yellow garb and
the Fu Manchu.
He's got the full on Fu Manchu. He's got the slanted eyes. He doesn't have an Asian accent, which is to their credit. They did not give him a Chinese accent. I don't know what that accent is, but it's not.
I imagine in a lot of the test readings, like, they were like, guys, we gotta dial back the,
And I will bring you peace and harmony, so that every magic thing might live together and share what enchantment remains.
But then you have the fourth brother.
Yeah, the
Omadon, the evil red wizard.
who lives in, like, a skull at the top of this scary mountain. And
Who is James Earl Jones.
Who's James Earl Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So they come together to create this magic barrier to protect themselves, because their magic power is waning as mankind shifts more towards scientific belief. But Omadon refuses, saying that his magic is powerful enough. He will inspire evil through men and through their technology.
Mm-hmm.
And when mankind has destroyed themselves, his magic will reign supreme.
I have weapons you would not dare use. Fear rules men. By summoning all the dark powers, I will infest the spirit of man, so that he uses his science and logic to destroy himself.
Yeah.
There's an atom bomb shown happening, so that's kind of all of his plan. So
Yeah.
he refuses, and the other wizards have then decided, well, we have to overthrow him and stop him and destroy him by stopping his red crown that he conveniently keeps mentioning.
Two thoughts on all of this. One, I love how Carolinas is like, okay, we have to, the technology is ruined and everything, we need to have a summit with my other brothers, and he's talking to, his dragons, and he's like, we gotta get them all together, we gotta get all of them. He's all like, even Omadon? Is all like, yes, it is the law, like, we absolutely must, all of the four brothers come up, and then when Omadon shows up, he's immediately like, piffle on your plan, I'm going to be super evil, and they all act surprised.
Like,
It's
shit, who could have seen this
he
coming?
lives in a flaming skull in, like, the realm of darkness
The
and
realm of
evil.
the Red Death.
Mhm.
Yeah, how on earth did you
Who would've
not
thought?
think that this was
He's-
going to happen?
He's
This exact
uglier
thing.
than all the brothers. He's, like, all hunched over, and he speaks in all these, like, destructive terms, and he's got a bitchin' bedazzled cloak.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard to take him seriously.
Oh, he's fabulous. I also love the implication that, things like war and atom bombs and everything like that.
And deforestation.
Yeah, it isn't the folly of man's inhumanity. It's all because of an evil rhino space wizard. And then once he's dead, everything will be fine for everyone. Yeah.
So, but according to the laws, the brothers are not allowed to wage war on one another. So they can't actually wage a war against Omadon to get his crown to defeat him. They have to instead have a quest. And, according to the laws, again...
According to the laws!
Which, again, is put forward by this ancient tree thing, they need to have at least 3 people. And they
all quests need to have 3
It's
people.
the rule of 3.
So they decide to summon Sir Orin Neville Smythe and the young dragon Gorbash, and they had needed a third person, who they needed to go to antiquity to find out who this person would be. And he's the 777th descendant of the great hero who tamed the dragons and taught them to speak in the first place. And his name is Peter.
Peter Dickinson.
From 1982 Boston.
And you may know him as the author of this book.
I did look that up. Peter Dickinson is not from Boston. He is, in fact, very British. So I don't know why it's like, who are we going to get to, play the author of this book? John Ritter.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
So that's the thing that I found really weird about like the character of Peter Dickinson is that he is a middle-aged nerd. But you imagine for like a high fantasy story like this where someone is getting taken from the present day into this fantasy world, he would be like a little kid.
Like a high school nerd.
Like a studious little kid, right? Who's like, who's like very bookish or whatever. Or like he was into his science classes or whatever, doesn't have a whole lot of friends, and then he's spirited away into this fantasy world. But no, it's a grown-ass man who's a fucking loser.
The thing to keep in mind is that in order to complete this quest, you need a PhD in physics.
Yes. You need a fucking PhD in physics to understand this goddamn movie.
Do you think there's any connection to the fact that the tree god of this fantasy world is called Antiquity, and when we first meet Peter Dickinson, he's in an antiques shop? Did I just blow your mind after 20 watches of this movie?
Yes.
That was the first... Well, because there's this weird correlation in the sense that when we see Peter Dickinson, he's in this antique shop, and he's playing a board game that he invented himself that's based on the book that he wrote called The Flight of Dragons.
He really wanted The Flight of Dragons to be all things to all people. He wanted it to be a movie, he wanted it to be a book, he wanted it to be a board game.
He was merchandising before like the book even hit the shelves,
so
he was actually pretty smart because he saw Star Wars, so he knew that the real money was in collectibles.
Merchandising.
Yeah, merchandising. But all of the pieces on the board game all resemble all of the fantasy characters that we've already met. So I kept waiting for there to be like this revelation that it was all kind of circular in the sense that
this movie is not that smart.
Peter sort of invented the world. In a sense, Peter was their god. Like they existed before him, but they also couldn't have existed without him. So I don't know. That was the thread I was going down. It doesn't tie up that way. That's not ultimately what ends up happening at all.
So they have to bring Peter from 1982 Boston into this fantasy world because he is the hero that has to save them. And in the process, their plan gets discovered, and then there's an attack on them, and then his consciousness is accidentally put into the body of Gorbash, the young dragon.
Yeah, because Carolina's fucks up.
Yeah, because he doesn't say the right incantation, and he merges them instead of...
It's really unfortunate because around that time, Peter is just like getting his Mac on with Coriolanus' daughter.
Oh yes, Coriolanus...
What's her name again? Melisandre?
Melisandre.
Yeah, from Game of Thrones.
From Princess Melisandre.
Yeah. Princess of nothing! She lives in a fucking cottage in the woods! She's not a princess! She's called Princess, but...
No, that's just her name. Her name is Princess.
Oh, yes. Her first name. And, well, she's also adopted. Because Carolina...
So, it depends on which version, because this backstory, this much more interesting backstory, is never actually explained. But at one point...
There's a couple of characters that have, like, a very interesting backstory that never gets explained.
But other than that really boring backstories, they do get explained.
Yeah.
Like how Gorbash got his name. Not an important plot point.
Named him Gorbash, in honor of the contest. For it was rather gory, and I did get a bit bashed about. Get it? Gory? Bashed? Hence, Gorbash.
Yeah, but like he's sitting with her on like the rocks or something, and she's like, yeah, I was this honor student and I could have gone like to MIT or whatever, but I just got so wrapped up in this world of dragons, and now it's actually happening. Now it's real.
Oh, and that's when he said the line. This was one of my favorite lines in the entire movie, where he was talking about, I was studying, I was going to be a scientist, and I was getting really far along, but really, all I wanted to do was just sit and imagine dragons. And I have to imagine, how amazing would it be
if that's where the band got
that's where the band name came from.
Radioactive.
So now that Peter's consciousness is now inside the body of Gorbash, the young dragon, they are now short one person, and it would be illegal to start this quest. So they decide to send the old dragon, who's supposed to teach Peter how to become a dragon.
His uncle or whatever.
Uncle Smurgle.
God knows, like, the young woman can't go with him because she has like divinatory powers. She can see into the future or see across great distances. But
then they embark on this quest, and they meet a talking wolf along the way. They meet.
We can talk about like the Fellowship of the Dragon, but since we've brought up the talking wolf, Arag. Okay, so the more characters join this quest as time goes on, but I love the way that this talking wolf is introduced. First of all, he's an undead talking wolf, because this is part of a backstory that we never actually get to see. People just reference it. The wolf rescues them from
He's like
Sand mercs.
Sandmerks, which are these like
Little-
crickets that
They're these chittering rat
Mice lizards, yeah.
that have like this like call that drives people insane if they listen to it too long, and it was pretty fucking hard to listen to on our end.
It is an effective, good job sound department.
It
because
goes
an effective
on for a
sound.
really long time.
Mhm.
Like they lean heavily on.
We were
that
about to
noise.
break out into a fist fight ourselves before before the wolf intervened.
And this is where Melisandre, who is using her psychic telepathy to
Keep an eye on him.
to narrate the story, really
Mm.
more than anything else. She goes insane from hearing the sound, and then yells at her father, saying that he killed her mother and father, and he blamed the night demons. And that was all we got of her
Yeah.
backstory, and I'm like, did he do it?
Yeah, like, go back
were
to
the
that.
what are the night demons? They sound like a fun bunch. I want to know more about
Yeah.
them.
But then Aureg, the undead wolf, shows up and kills the queen, because that's how you get rid of... It's Avengers rule.
Yeah.
You know, you kill the mothership, and then everyone... they all just fuck off. Then the spell is broken, and they see him, and they're like, Aureg, I thought you were dead. You were pulled under the sea by a giant squid.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that scene?
Yeah, that'd be
Why
awesome
did-
to see.
We watched like a 10-minute scene where Dickinson in the body of Gorash explains the fundamentals of how dragons can fly and breathe fire and everything, but you couldn't animate a giant squid pulling a wolf under the water? And it's so weird because when we see the blue wizard revive him, he's just like lying there. So like, did that just happen?
Oh no, it
Did that-
happened a long time ago.
So his body's not decomposed or anything?
It's
or-
just laying there at the
He's
bottom
just-
of the
he's
ocean.
perfectly fine, just
Yeah.
on the bottom of, as if they took like a cell of animation and just put it in an environment that didn't make any sense for it to be
Well, that's
there.
true. He was pulled under by a squid, but he wasn't eaten. He wasn't crushed. He wasn't.
No,
like,
the squid just wanted him on the bottom of the ocean.
There, you stay
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
now.
this is where you go.
It's like he's collecting collecting wolves. Like, I like this one. He's gonna go down here.
That was a weird sequence where they were talking about like how the dragons fly, because the method they do it
Oh
is
my
they
god,
just
let's
they just,
talk about this.
They just straight up steal gems from dwarves in like this totally not codependent relationship.
You want to fly, don't you? To fly, you need gemstones. To get gemstones, you rob dwarf mines. Come on out, I say. And bring gems. Hurry now before we devour you. You wouldn't really. Ah, dwarfs, no. They're all sinewy and hairy. The meat you get's not worth picking out of the teeth.
But like the dwarves are just essentially indentured servants
Yeah,
to the dragons.
The dwarves are terrified. Like, it's kind of interesting that these are the same people that did the animated Hobbit movie.
They come out with these sacks with dollar signs on them
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But not only
so-
do you... Oh, go ahead.
How the movie explains it. So Smeargle, the actual dragon, the
Right.
old dragon,
Mhm.
just says dragons fly because there's fire in their belly, and we're dragons, so we breathe fire, and that's why that's how it works. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
That's all you ever need to know.
That's all we as the
no one
audience need
needs
to know.
explain everything. But Peter, because he's a fucking nerd, decides that explanation is not good enough. So he starts breaking it out. It's like, oh, so we're eating these. We swallow these gemstones. Like birds swallow grit to grind seeds in their stomach, and then you eat limestones, but you can't chew them because they're too hard for your teeth. You just swallow them whole. And then
Limestone is high in calcium. Calcium, when mixed with stomach acids, would form hydrogen. Hydrogen is lighter than air, thus giving the lift you talk about, something like a blimp.
What? You got fire inside you when you go up. That's all you need to know.
And the entire time he's doing it, like the entire time he's explaining it, Smeargle is basically like the audience surrogate. He's just going like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't
dragons
care.
breathe
Dragons
fire.
breathe fire.
It's a fantasy movie.
Let's just move on with. Oh God, you're still talking. Oh God, we're still.
And it goes on for way too long.
But it's a very important scene because otherwise, how would you know how he can fly?
He starts-
You don't need to.
The
but
John
now you
Ritter
do.
dragon starts making these fucking diagrams and like per my dissertation, I will be explaining like how the dragons fly.
He like snaps off like a tree branch and he uses it as like a pointer. Like it's honestly, it's a lecture. In the middle of the way, he just gives like a lecture on something that he just learned.
Compartments we can expand and contract. And when we expand, the hydrogen, dragon fire as it were, expands and makes us lighter than air, and up we go!
Oh, for crying out loud.
We don't see the giant squid drag a wolf
No!
down in the water, but we get time to watch this fucking lecture.
I wanted to see the giant squid, but no, we get to have
It's science class.
we get to have John Ritter's dragon dissertation right in the middle of this. I thought it was so weird. Like when the movie opens and we first see the dragons flying across the sky, my first thought is that, wow, the dragons are really fat.
Yeah.
All of the dragons
They should not be able to fly.
They are thick boys.
And I
all
can
of
tell
them.
you, just wait. You're going to find out how that works.
And
too.
like, I thought it was, once I clued in before the movie explained it to me that, like, oh, they actually inflate and that's how they get there. I was like, oh, okay, so that's at least like some possible explanation to it. Whatever, okay, that's kind of cool. But then the movie had to ruin it by fucking explaining it and drilling it into my mind.
But can you imagine? It took kind of all of the sort of like wonder and amazement out of drag. Can you imagine watching like Game of Thrones and like in like those final episodes, the dragons inflate with like gas? Like, wouldn't it be way less intimidating if they're just big bulbous things? I kept thinking the entire time while I was watching this movie must have inspired countless deviant art members. Just in the sense of characters that just like inflate to like gross sizes and are like, oh, my belly is so full of gas. Oh, I'm so pregnant right now.
Jesus. I haven't been seeing those ones,
This
guys.
is a fetish movie
And then
for
that-
so many people.
And that honestly sets the tone for how this movie works. Because there's multiple times when they come across this, this magical obstacles in a way. And Peter Dickens like, oh, that's acid.
Not only is it acid, but I can smell the sulfur in the air. That's how I knew it
And
was
that's how I
acid.
knew. It was like,
Acid is the base compound of,
Yeah.
Fuck, God.
Which is all culminating in the brilliant finale of the movie. Before we get there, so the rest of the plot is now they've collected the wolf, they get attacked by
those rats,
like small gnomes, like some kind of woodland elf
Hobbits.
They get attacked by hobbits. And then this woman with a longbow, this Robin Hood character, comes in.
The only other woman in this movie.
Saves them from these elves, and then one of the elves joins them, and that's it for her. She doesn't do anything else important. She's just kind of there.
Danielle is her name.
Danielle is her name.
She's an odd character, and she really stands out, not just because she's the only other woman in this whole
Yeah, not
movie.
because of her personality.
She literally stands out off the animated screen because she doesn't have a dark outline around her character.
Yeah.
She was designed by another artist entirely.
Yeah.
Everyone else has a black outline. She has like sort of like a skin tone outline around everything, and it's really weird looking.
It's literally a character
It's otherworldly looking.
It's from a different movie.
Yeah.
She literally stepped in from a different animated movie because she doesn't match the art style of everyone else in the movie. Yeah, she's missing all the contours. Yeah. It's very odd.
And she's got like bigger eyes and her face isn't all fucked up looking.
Yeah.
Like more lines than there need to be. Like she's beautiful looking, but like why does she just like jump off the screen?
I mean, it might make sense if they went with one character model for all women. Because there are only two. This movie does not pass the Bechdel test because there are only two women in this movie, and they never share a scene together. Mm-hmm. But and they both of them talk about men all the time. But the princess doesn't look like her. The princess has dark contours like everyone else. It's just this one character that they didn't finish.
Mm. That's weird.
Like time constraints, man. That time crunch comes, and you gotta get the movie out.
Oh, we gotta mention Sir Orin,
Orin Neville Smythe.
Yes, the chivalrous knight who accompanies them on this journey.
The 55-year-old knight.
Oh God! Okay, yeah, we got to. Okay, so there's like this weird love triangle going on between Peter, Sir Orin, and the princess. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because the romance between Peter and the princess isn't really established. They kind of share like a little hug at the beginning, and then we're left to imply that, like, oh, now they're, like, deeply in love with each other.
Which is weird, because Peter created this whole world in his mind, so he
has a little doll that he
he sees her as his creation, so it's very kind of, I don't know, like, masturbatory, is that the right word for it?
Also, she's only, like, 17 or 18, because they says, like, I met her when she was,
but that's not even the weird part.
I met her when she was 5, which was a dozen years ago, so she's 17 or 18 years old now. And
this guy in his late 50s who is like,
he was in his 30s at the time.
Yeah.
Don't jump the gun.
Yeah, right.
But Sir Orin, Sir Orin literally says, Sir Orin has like this flashback where We see how he rescued Baby Gorbash from the evil dragon, and at the end he gives Baby Gorbash to the princess, who's like 5 at the time, and he literally says that I made a vow then and there to marry the princess one day when she came of age. And it's all like, she's fucking 5. That's not even like a fantasy trope. That's just gross. It's just a weird thing.
Well, keep in mind also, so she's again 17 or 18. So Peter Dickinson clearly has a PhD in something. So he is earliest 27 or 28 years old, and then he falls in love with her too. It's either way, she doesn't.
I mean, it's this fantasy world is there's not a whole lot of eligible bachelorettes around there, so I can empathize with, or I can sympathize with them. I can't relate to what where they're going for, but I can. It's got to be rough, guys. But don't go down that.
It's funny how sparsely populated this world is. I mean, you could make the argument that, the budget wasn't there for the animation, so we don't get a lot of, ancillary, townsfolk characters. They still found a way to animate 500 fucking dragons, though. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's where all the money went.
Mm-hmm. The dragon budget.
The dragon budget was
dragon money
through the roof. I really dug Sir Oren's look, though. He looked cool. He was a cool-looking guy. He had, a cool mask that came down. He had little, pointy nipples on his armor that at first were kind of distracting, but near the end I'm all you know what? You're making it work. You're really making it work.
But they seem to, grow in size, depending on the scene. Nobody could stay on, none of the artists could stay on model for these characters.
The sizing for these characters is never consistent. At least the dragons have any suit because they're supposed to inflate and deflate when they fly. Mm-hmm. But why is the wolf, 4 times the size of a man in one scene, and then, being pet by him as a tiny dog in another one? It doesn't make any sense.
I love it.
So they get to an inn, which is right on the outskirts.
Which is the scary part of the movie, and it is there's a shot in there that's genuinely terrifying.
There's lots of shots in this movie that are genuinely terrifying. I think if I watched this movie as a kid, I'd be petrified, really, through most of it, because there's some absolutely terrifying imagery. Obedon is a terrifying character.
Ogre is a well-designed ogre.
Yes. So they go to an inn. This is funny. The dragons go down to the cellar and they eat all of the innkeeper's
food, drink all the wine,
spoils,
all the ale.
And then the innkeeper's like, "Oh, I'm ruined," and Sir Oren's all like, "Oh, you'll be paid eventually. Dragons have gold." And then a troll shows up, kidnaps Danielle and Sir Oren, and just straight up kills the innkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty harsh.
It was hard to take, yeah.
And then, so that to rescue them, they have to go and fight the ogre, which is where our old mentor Smurgle comes in at the last minute to save the fight, but then he's so old that he dies in exertion from fighting this thing.
He has a dragon stroke.
Yeah, well, according to the source material, he was in the process of having a stroke, so that's why he couldn't fight.
Yeah, Brett...
Too many gems will do that to you.
Yeah, Brett looked this up before we hit record here. So we mentioned this movie is based on, 2 books, and what it seems like is that The Dragon and the George is the book where they took a lot of the character names
and some plot points
from,
itself.
And then The Flight of Dragons is where they took all the boring science bullshit
that nobody asked for.
And then they decided to name it after the boring science.
After the science book, yeah. So it's they took this book, and it's we have the rights to this, but we optioned the rights to this book, and then someone actually read the book, and they're like, "Oh, there's no plot here. Let's just take this other book about dragons and mash them into each other."
We bought the rights to 2 different dragon stories. Which one do we want to make a movie out of? Why not both?
Why not both?
So then, after they've rescued everybody, they head into the realm of the Red Death, where they have a final showdown with a giant worm, the bad dragon Briog,
a giant worm with a massive
dog face.
Yeah. What did that worm remind me of? I couldn't.
You know what it reminded me?
Anti-Semite propaganda is what that nose reminded you of.
It reminded me of Salacious Crumb from Return of the Jedi.
Yes, thank you.
Same face
with a slightly bigger nose.
And this is the year before, so who inspired whom?
You got a lawsuit on your hands there, Peter Dickinson. I was almost going to say Peter Dinklage.
And then there's the final showdown with everyone dies.
Yeah.
And then Peter has his final showdown with the evil wizard.
So he escapes the being possessed, or he escapes being, what was he doing? He was possessing garbage?
They inhabited the same body, but Gorbash
was asleep in the back.
Yeah, he was asleep in the back.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been more interesting if they were both in the same body and then they could
Yes, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But this movie didn't do that.
What's more interesting, that or finding out how the hydrochloric acid got into the realm?
But yeah, he says two objects cannot occupy the same place at the same time, and that's when he breaks free. It was because like his science and logic break all like confines.
And
of
then we
magic
get-
rules.
Which, thematically is kind of nice, because in order to actually defeat the evil wizard Omadon, he has to deny that magic is real at all.
Mhm.
But if he does deny magic, then he's no longer allowed to live in this wonderful world where he now finds his place.
Yeah.
Or be with the woman he loves.
Mhm.
So there's actually a bit of
was-
tragic irony there.
It was at least consistent with those like with the scientific grounding. That
I
they
was
were basing it
really confused because, okay, so, yeah, that's how he defeats Omadon, by denying all of his magic, and as Omadon is dying, he's like, all of these magic things, sorcerers and witches and hydras and
demons,
whatnot.
ogres,
and
witches,
then
ghouls.
Peter just lists off astrology.
Algebra, astronomy,
Yeah,
anatomy,
microbiology.
biology.
Devils, witches, demons, ogres, trolls, sandmans, harpies, ghouls, sorcerers.
Come algebra, anatomy, astronomy, biology, chemistry, geology, geometry, mathematics, meteorology, mineralogy, oceanography, paleontology, physics, psychology, sociology, trigonometry, and so on.
And this hurts him. Like, the words of science are like acid to his ears, and that's what ends up, like, destroying him. But this is what confused me. Carolinus wanted Peter to use his science to deny magic, but wasn't that what he was arguing against at the beginning with the people with the mill?
You wanted to preserve the magic,
you-
or you wanted them to live in harmony together.
Coriolanus realized that our magic is failing, so we have to actually seclude ourselves from the world to protect ourselves so our magic can flourish. But Omadon refuses to do that.
Oh,
and they
okay.
need... So Omadon is saying, I will infect the world with evil magic.
Science.
And they will... So Coriolanus always knew that
Yeah.
Peter wasn't going to be able to stay.
Yeah.
He knew it.
Yeah,
But
but
because
but
it's
his
only by denying magic that you could defeat Omadon, so they could
Right.
make the magic realm, but Peter would not be allowed to live.
it was like science and logic just needed a champion to fight against Omadon.
Omadon.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Ermagerd. Ermagerd, the evil,
Thanks,
the evil
Omadon.
wizard.
Evil red wizard.
I will say this about this movie: like, I always figured that it was going to be like a very a religious organization that would want to put out like a pro enchantment or pro not pro fantasy but pro faith movie that denies science and denies logic and thinking. And this is sort of like a counterpoint that I never knew existed. Like it was there was no movie that I'd ever seen that uses like a staunchly scientific-minded protagonist to fight against like superstition and magic and shit.
Yeah, this has got a really weird message, and I don't know if I quite get what it's trying to put out there. Like, it's saying that, like, it seems to be, like, very pro-science, but it takes place entirely within this fantastical realm of wizards and dragons, and it seems the final point seems to be, like, magic is all well and good, but it needs to stay here. It needs to stay here, and it needs to have, like, a dome over it, and it can never leave.
Yeah.
And, like,
So I'm wondering, like, sorry, but I just want to make this point, like, who is this movie directed towards? What is this a pushback against?
I don't think it's a necessarily pushback against anything, because it's pro science, but it's also pro magic, because the whole conceit of Coriolanus has is that magic needs to exist forever to inspire humanity to invent things, to find things, and to
needs its place.
Be a little fantasy realm that human beings can escape to when they want. So if magic goes away entirely, like if there's no magic in the world, then the world would cease to move forward, because magic needs to inspire science. So he wants to preserve that magic which can, you can stretch it out. It's like that's just wonder and whimsy, and like when a child sees something that they don't understand and it's magic to them, but their interest in it allows them to figure out how it works and then actually do something with it. But what this movie is kind of putting forward is that since all evil in the world is just from evil magic inspiring people to do evil things, all you really need to do is get rid of the evil magic. So use science to get rid of the evil magic, because without evil magic and only science, there's no atomic bombs?
Yeah.
Deforestation?
And then we'll have dragons along with our iPads.
Yeah.
This is the ramblings of just like an insane fucking nerd. How did this
Peter Dickinson.
Peter Dickinson, yeah, who I have to assume is exactly like the character that he portrayed in this.
Who, as a man in his late 20s, early 30s, in the 1980s, decides to have like very, very cleanly cropped hair,
and a bow tie,
a sweater vest,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make
pants, and a long trench coat.
I'm gonna make a hard choice here. I'm gonna say he's a solid like 39. Like
I don't doubt it.
Too old
He's John
to
Ritter's
be
age.
doing
Yeah.
this.
He's John
Yeah.
Ritter's age.
I got a feeling that this guy was picked on a lot when he was in high school.
I have a
And he-
feeling this guy gets picked on a
To this day.
on a daily basis.
We're making fun of him right now.
His lab tech is like, whatever, nerd. And
Yeah.
he goes off and does his lab tech stuff.
Steals his girlfriend and everything. Like,
his-
I'll show you.
His only friend appears to be the elderly antiques dealer with whom
Who he always has play as the evil wizard in the game.
Yeah, with whom he plays a board game that he himself invented based on a book about dragons that he himself is writing.
Here's what happened.
This is our protagonist.
Here's what I think happened.
And even the antiques dealer is kind of sick of his bullshit.
So I think Peter, like, he had like a pretty lab assistant when he was in university or whatever that he was like really sweet on. And then one day they were invited to go play Dungeons and Dragons, and the lab assistant fell in love with the dungeon master, and she never went back to the lab. And this is his way of saying, no, science prevails over your bookish fantasy world.
The final scene of the movie that they cut out of the final print is just shows like Peter, but he's like 30 pounds heavier, and he's just in his basement, and then the princess came to the real world, and she kissed him on the lips in front of the antiques dealer.
And she really liked him. Oh boy. Yeah.
Okay. But the movie actually ends with Peter going back to the antiques dealer. Earlier he tried to pawn a watch that wasn't going to get anything, but he brought...
Okay, wait, because
Yeah, we forgot to
he needs
mention-
to raise money so he can put his board game
His
in
hedge
print.
fund.
He needs a couple of $1,000
Right.
so he can get this fantasy-themed board game,
Mhm.
which is, I don't know of dice, like six-sided dice rolls that determine abilities while you're playing on a Candyland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It
Candyland-
wasn't even... It wasn't like a tabletop board game like Dungeons and Dragons. It was like Chutes and Ladders.
Yeah. The people who made this had never played Dungeons and Dragons. They played like fucking
They've
Monopoly.
never played a board game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the animator's just like, oh, board game. Oh, I know what that looks like. Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of game that is, but he wants to quit his job as a scientist, and he seems to be doing fairly well as a scientist because he's like getting grants and doing all this research.
He's obviously brilliant.
He's a very well educated. He's got at least a PhD, at
Mhm,
least.
mhm.
And but he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to imagine dragons. But his goal is to get this board game out there, and he's going to be rich by putting his coins, because we all know how rich board games make people in the 1980s.
That's where the
We all
money
know,
is.
like, Gary Gygax was just rolling in dough like Scrooge McDuck.
He just wants to spend his day imagining dragons. You know why? Because he's a believer! Believer! That's also a song by Imagine Dragons.
We tied it all
And you
together.
just put, like, every time we say Imagine Dragons,
Oh,
you just put a sound clip.
I'll be putting pictures up and
I,
everything.
I would, except Imagine Dragons is a very popular band,
Yeah,
and I
they
don't
could-
want to get flagged, so...
But yes, back to your point, the movie ends with him pawning these magic items that he got from the...
Which we forgot to talk
Yeah.
about.
Which is, like, for example, a huge Captain America-sized shield
Mhm.
made of solid gold, which
Mhm.
he just has now.
Mhm.
And he's like, oh, this is a magic item that saved my life in this fantasy realm that was a gift to me by the great blue wizard who commands the deepest oceans, highest mountains, and outer
Commands
space.
everything.
Can I have
Yes.
$50 for this? He's trying to pawn it
To the old man
for his
pawn
stupid-
dealer, like, he
for
doesn't
his
have that
stupid
kind of
game.
money.
But then, what's even more missing is, as he's trying to pawn this golden shield, what's her name?
Melisandre.
Melisandre comes in, and she pawns the evil red crown of Omadon.
Presumably also to help this,
Yeah.
this fledgling board game industry take off.
Do you know what I love? I forgot that red crown reminded me of, do you guys watch the Venture Brothers?
Yeah.
Do you remember this? All like,
No! Not the ring of power! It's the only thing that can steal my black heart! Owie! It hurts! Oh, dick! But it missed my black heart! Die! Ow, dude! Stop already! You're not even aiming for my black heart! I can't with you! Will you take the f***ing hit and stab me in the heart already? I got it! Your evil black heart is where your power comes from. No, you have learned my terrible secret.
Okay, so the princess was Melisandre, and she had an evil red crown. So really, this is a prequel to Game of Thrones, and this is how we find out
The Red Woman.
the Red Woman, yeah!
So the Lord of Light is just Peter Dickinson
Or the...
creating these worlds and then putting his girlfriend in
Yeah,
because so
and there was like an unspecific, like, tree god in Game of Thrones as well.
Weirwood trees.
Yeah, this is totally, George R.R. Martin cribbed so much from this. Now that we think about it.
Yeah.
You know, dragons used to exist, and now they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, you got a lawsuit on your hands. You got a lawsuit on your hands, Martin.
I think we got, like, the unofficial prequel to Game of Thrones before we actually get the prequel to Game of Thrones.
So HBO, no need to do that. Listeners, just watch Flight of Dragons.
It's already
I will
there.
say, this ended better than the last season of Game of Thrones. Fucking Oh my God with his, like...
Oh my God!
Oh my God! With
his
his
name's
like,
Oh my God!
With his like 7 dragon head Hydra thing, and Peter Dinklage or Peter whatever the hell his name is, just spouting off like science terms to him. Like,
so it's a ridiculous premise, but it's executed so well.
It's so good.
I was waiting this. I told him like this movie, the final battle, the final showdown of this movie is not gonna go how you think it's gonna go.
I don't know if I can agree with you that it was executed so. The fact there's like a giant 7-headed dragon that also has like a wizard's body, bulbous morphing body attached to it. It was bitchin'. It was an absolutely bitchin',
cool.
like final bass. And
he's just explained the theory of relativity.
He's defeated by just yelling science terms at him. I don't think I can agree with you in the sense that this ending worked so perfectly.
It worked perfectly in the context of the movie and how they wanted to set it up.
Yeah.
They achieved what they set out to do.
I was
Sometimes
floored.
that doesn't happen.
I couldn't believe it, but I was floored by it.
Body in motion tends to stay in motion. Protons have 1,832 times the mass of electrons. All light is bent or refracted as it goes from one medium to another, save in direction perpendicular to the interface between the two mediums! The geometrical properties of the space-time continuum are determined by the masses present in the space and time.
The next time I face like a really big like personal conflict in my life, or like some like I gotta like resist some like imposing force, I'm just gonna recite that shit.
Just memorize that. Just keep like that in your wallet of just like all the
personal affirmations every day.
It might work.
How much better it would have been if Tony Stark had in his fist fight with Thanos just starts yelling these things at him, and I was like, oh, I hate the sound of that. You fucking.
Oh, what a nerd! No. Okay. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about that happened in this movie?
The only thing that I have written down that we didn't talk about was one of my favorite lines in the movie, which came from the John Ritter dragon. I have a longing to eat a cow. Which from now on I'm gonna call whenever I go to like Burger King or I go to a barbecue. I have a longing to eat a cow.
I can help with that.
Alright, so this was a movie that I watched many times as a kid.
How did it affect you as a kid?
Yeah, did it like shape you into the man you are today?
I didn't go into science, so
no.
I just felt like I liked it as a kid. I thought it was fun, and then the older I got, the more ridiculous the movie became.
When was
in
the
my
last
imagination? And the more ridiculous it became, the more I liked it because it became really funny. When you can tell somebody that, hey, do you want to watch this movie where an evil wizard is defeated by listing off all various sciences of the space? Because that's not an exaggeration of what happens in the movie. That's what happens in the movie.
When was the last time you watched it before now?
Before now? Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, when my brother reminded me that this movie exists. And I'm like, oh, right, I gotta see that again. And I watched it again. And he goes, I didn't realize how ridiculous this movie was. And then before that, I was probably like 7.
Yeah.
7 or 8 years old. Home from school. No one else was home, so I just put in this VHS tape.
Were you not?
So I could watch that Rice Krispies commercial again, and this movie comes on.
Well, but when you were like 7 and you were watching it, like, were you like enthralled through all of it, or were there not parts of it where you were just bored, like the whole dragon lecture and like the whole just like listing of things that exist in science?
I mean, I watched the whole movie every time, so I don't know how enraptured I was, like sitting on the edge of my seat with like.
What about?
Like, was my mouth agape going, this is the greatest
what
movie
about
ever,
in,
I
like,
definitely just watched it multiple times.
What about in like grade 10 science, where like they started going into a lot of the stuff they talk about in this movie, and you're like, wait, I know! And then, like, your arm shoots up to let the teacher...
Body in motion tends to stay in motion!
Very good, Brett!
That's what happened in my 7th grade
Yeah.
physics class. Yeah, that's how that works.
Well, I know Brett's answer to this, but Jameson, would you recommend The Flight of Dragons?
I absolutely would recommend The Flight of Dragons. I would also recommend having accompanied up like your bong nearby.
Yes.
Go
if you're gonna get wrecked while watching this movie, go full period wreck. Like, get yourself like some gold goblets, make yourself up like some mead or some mulled wine. Get a big wizard's like pipe
the long pipe.
Yeah.
Make sure you got some Led Zeppelin nearby when you're done.
No, man, Don McLean.
Don McLean. That was a great song.
I will say that for a movie that's only 90 minutes, it feels a lot longer.
That was only 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It does feel like a very long movie.
I mean, it's an animated movie, about like dragons and wizards and sorcerers and whatnot. There's a lot of talking in it. It's a lot of just like stale scenes where characters are passing information back and forth.
I think it just feels long because it just keeps introducing new characters to you.
Yeah, late in the game.
Long after they've already established like the world, and then they're like getting into the backstory, and then they pull the guy in from the future, and then they introduce more characters and like more locations. It's just, it feels like it's longer than 90 minutes.
I will also say, watching Sir Oren Neville Smythe take down Breog was pretty awesome.
Yes.
that was a good scene.
It was pretty dope. Yeah, the evil dragon
rematch.
breathes fire on him, and then he's just completely engulfed in flames, and then he throws a flaming sword into us. I thought dragons had like impenetrable hides, but I guess I don't know. It doesn't make sense because they're filled with gas
The movie
anyway.
should have
So
explained that.
Pop.
Well, yeah,
I'm sure the movie did explain that. I was just phased out at the point.
If you just pop the dragon's belly, the gas will just come out. And it won't catch fire because there's no spark.
I was imagining.
But if the flaming sword pierces them, then that ignites the gas in them. It causes them to burst into flames.
That's just science.
As soon as I knew that like the dragons flew because they were filled with gas, all I could imagine was every scene of them flying, just like the sound of just like like the entire way through.
I like how he breathed fire into like the acid mouth of the giant worm, and that killed him, and we got no explanation for how that worked.
Not only that, but like the animation budget ran out there, so that he just kind of like phased out of the movie.
Just dissolved.
He didn't like die or anything. He just this movie's a trip. This movie's pretty fun. It's the movie equivalent of like that dude who like airbrushed like a sweet mural on the side of his van. It's like
also a physics professor.
It was inspired by two books and also that one guy's van.
Yeah, he was the cool teacher who had the van with the airbrush dragons and the barbarian babe. You could buy weed off him. Not naming any names here.
Brett, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have plugs? Do you have anything upcoming that you want to say that you're doing?
No, but just be nice to each other.
All right.
Right on. That's a good message.
Well, in lieu of that, name one thing you're listening to or watching that is awesome that people listening to this should seek out.
I mean, everyone has already been talking about, but watch the hell out of Chernobyl if you get a chance.
Yeah. I'm only like the first episode in. I was thoroughly bummed out.
By all the horrible things.
By all the horrible things. And it's just like, it's gonna get so much worse. It's going to get so much worse as we go on. Jameson, what do you love right now?
My girlfriend. We're actually playing through Mass Effect right now, so it's I'm
the first one.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do the whole trilogy, and so I'm falling back in love with that game series.
There's 4 games in there. You gotta do all of them.
No, I haven't touched the 4th game.
You gotta do all of them. You gotta do it.
All right, cool.
All right.
I want to shout out a plug to a couple of local bands that I saw last night. My friend Eric has a solo music project called Sub Top. And he just released his first album. It's called Silver. That's available on Spotify. It's super dope. You should listen to it. I went to go see him last night, and the band that he was playing with was a band I hadn't heard before called the Argyle Embargo. They were fucking incredible. It was 5 people. They all take turns playing the different instruments, and they all take turns singing. Like at one point, like someone would be like playing the banjo, and someone else would be on the drums, and someone else would be on the keyboards, and then they would just like switch around. So it was an amazing experience to go support a friend, and then it turned out the other band was also great. Yeah, so the Argyle Embargo and Subtop, they're both on Spotify. Listen to those. Support local Vancouver-based musicians. Thanks a lot, Brett.
Yeah,
for
thanks for
coming
coming.
down.
Yeah, thank you.
And, we'll catch you next time on the show. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.